meeting. Follow the sign. Service Committee to order. Over 17. Do a roll call.
Cahill. Desart. Here. Echo.
Here.
Garcia. Here. Krasniewski.
Here.
Rutledge. Here.
Okay. Get a motion to approve our minutes.
Second.
Any questions, comments, additions, deletions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Somebody have one? Okay. Any opposed? Motion carries. Move on for get a motion for our procurement recommendation.
So moved.
Order. Second. Any questions or comments?
I do.
Okay.
I was wondering, was this in the budget for this year, or is this one of the vehicles we're purchasing now because of supply chain issues? And it was, when is this in the budget?
Yeah, so this is being paid out of 20. It was already, we already paid the invoice for the Tahoe to the dealer, and we took delivery this fiscal year, so we paid for that. But then we send it to a company in Indiana that outfits it with all of the cages.
Okay.
And that's also getting paid in this year. Yes.
And it was budgeted for this
Correct.
year?
Yeah.
And so the 29,000 is for the Tahoe?
Correct.
And how much more for the outfitting it?
Oh, sorry. That's for outfitting the Tahoe. We already paid for the Tahoe.
Okay.
Yes.
So 29,000
is how much it costs to outfit the Tahoe.
Thank you.
Yes.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Just seeing if our attorney was paying attention here, but he was. So he noticed that I skipped public comment on purpose to see if he was catching it. So now we'll go back to public comment. Nobody signed in. So thank you very much for keeping an eye on me over here. And move on to budget transfers. I get a motion for transfer of funds.
So
Questions, comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, fiscal year 2024 animal service budget presentation.
Yeah, so this is a little bit different from prior years. Our operating is pretty similar with some increases in revenue and expenses, but with the building project happening and then also purchasing another vehicle, we've got some capital expenses. But overall, just because we have some new members, I like to throw this slide up here, just kind of sharing with everybody some of the core responsibilities that our department has, because it's so much more than just sheltering animals and trying to find outcomes for them. There's a lot of public safety and health and law enforcement that goes into the work that we do. And then just really trying to make sure that we're providing resources to our residents on solutions that they have with animals, whether it's their own animals or wildlife or neighbors' pets. So one of the things I wanted to point out that's been unique compared to last year is our animal intake has been somewhat increased from prior years. Particularly, our length of stay has been increasing since a lot of those pandemic restrictions were lifted. So for some perspective, in 2021, our average length of stay went up to 25, just over 25 days. In 2022, it went up to 31, almost 32 days per animal, and that's including animals in foster. We're still trending in those mid-20s for this current year, but increased length of stay is usually meaning a couple of things. We've got increased costs, right, for caring for those animals while they're with us. And then we talk about why are those animals staying with us longer, and it's because we're just seeing a lot more challenges with the animals coming into our shelter. As we've talked about, we are the place where everybody goes when all the other shelters are turning them away. So we're getting some of the animal cases that are, the sickest animals, maybe the most behavioral challenged animals. And as a result, they're staying with us longer. And then the fact that we take all species of animals compared to shelters in our area. Rabbits, for example, tend to have a longer length of stay, not just because they're not as popular of an animal to get adopted out, but when we're doing that due diligence of spaying and neutering them before they leave our building, the recovery for that is much longer. Sometimes when we get these little babies in, it takes months before they're even ready to be eligible for surgery. So our length of stay is really impacting our costs. So I just wanted to share that.
Can I just ask a question while we're there, Chairman?
Go ahead.
Because we're taking the sickest animals and the animals with the worst behavior, not that I have anything to do with it, but I am proud of DuPage County Animal Services kill rate, that it's so low. Is this affecting our kill rate?
I haven't run our numbers recently, but we've still been hovering in those high 80s, which has been nice. Dr. Hannick is phenomenal in trying to make sure that she's doing everything possible. I'll do a little anecdote story.
Yeah.
We were just talking about it this morning. So the challenge becomes we don't have enough resources in our communities, or we've got organizations that have the resources and they're choosing not to help because they just say, go to county. And one such example is we got a phone call, I have two of them, but I'm going to share the one. Somebody is homeless. They're living in a hotel in Addison. They have a large breed dog that's 11 months old. Over a week ago, he swallowed 2 corns of cob, or cobs of corn, sorry. And they took him to a vet, and the vet said, you can't afford anything. So then they went to an emergency vet that they wouldn't even take him back for x-rays. They just gave him some fluids, gave him some anti-nausea medication, and said, you can't pay, so we're not going to help you. And so then the pet owner said, well, I don't want to watch my dog die a slow, painful death. Please just euthanize him. And they refused. They refused to euthanize this dog because they said, well, he's only 11 months old. This is treatable. He just needs $7,000 worth of surgery. Go figure it out. Why don't you call county?
Oh boy, that's horrible.
So now I've got somebody on the phone.
It's inhumane.
It's inhumane, right? They want to do the right thing. They don't have the financial resources to do it. So then that burden of making a decision about euthanasia or care is now on our team, right? We have to decide, are we doing the x-rays, the exploratory surgery, trying to get this dog healthy, not even knowing what his behavior is going to be. I can't tell you how many times we will go through all of that medical and then we find out that animal's maybe not safe to place because the true behaviors coming into the shelter environment aren't indicative of how that animal might act because he's in pain, right? He's not, but then we find out later that maybe that animal isn't safe to place, but we put all of this work into him. It's heartbreaking, right? Yeah. So we did take this dog with 2 cobs of corn in him. Dr. Hannick will be making a decision today about, if she's doing surgery or for euthanizing him, but that's the challenge we face, right?
Was the family willing to take him back once he gets the cobs out?
I don't know. They're homeless.
Oh.
They're struggling with some other things.
Not to mention we have an issue with having to give it back, but we've surrendered it.
Yeah, I mean, so
they
there's
allowed
a lot
to
of,
take the cobs of corn?
No, because they surrendered it. I mean, we're not a place that
gotcha.
just, I mean, we try to work our way
no,
around that.
we can't necessarily do this for every single person that can't afford medical care for their pet, and that's a lot of people, right? It's a lot of people, and we don't have enough low-cost clinics. And I don't want to get too far off this, but it's just another example of like our expenses go up because the community keeps expecting us to do more. We need more partners in doing this. It can't just be let DuPage County Animal Services fix it, especially with our current funding model, right? So,
well, that goes back to a conversation we had, I think, last year about when DuPage County residents surrender an animal, the fee is X. But when you're outside of DuPage County and you surrender your animal at DuPage County, the fee should be more.
Well, we're going to talk about some fees on the revenue slide too, because we are going to be making some changes. But yeah, it's been challenging as we continue to see our expenses go up, and part of this is attributed not just to increase everything is more expensive, but when we have a longer length of stay.
That live release rate. What year did this rate start?
Oh, geez.
2016.
I thought it was earlier.
I have the Wayback Machine over there.
Yeah, but either way, maybe with the gala coming up at the 10th, whatever, in April, just do whenever we started 2015 or whatever, just the live release rate for now, but just calculate the animals that we're saving.
Sure. Yeah.
Because, when we go up 20%, we bring in 2,000 animals. That's 400 that weren't getting out the door in 1 year, but since the time it's had oversight over it, you guys have probably saved now several thousands of animals that wouldn't have got out, just is it something to present out there, but how many animals have made it out of the building?
The way when I look at our numbers for this year, we're going to end the year with over 2,000 animals likely coming in. And yeah, we'll see. I'll hopefully be able to give you a good update on our dog born in his tummy. So
back to that 2000, and we've had like 4 incidents this year, which usually get about 1, where we have a huge amount of intake because of going in, whether it's 30 dogs at like
Yeah,
16.
we talked about that. Yeah.
And so, as you said, you need more community support. I know we talked a while ago about CERT and working with them, but we probably should work on trying to put together something where emergency fosters, et cetera, when we have cases like that, because we've had 4 this year, I think, when we usually have 1. But,
I'm sorry.
pardon?
Like
4 cases of what?
Like large animal
Large
intake.
intakes where we had the one with 16
gotcha.
animals in a
Gotcha.
sheet at one
Thank you.
time, and then we had
47
early
dogs.
Yeah.
roosters in right in early January. But we had last year, the year before, we had intake of rabbits, 31 times. So we have this big. We should probably try to put like an emergency thing together, just with potential people want to be fosters, just for a couple of weeks while we get them out. And even work with CERT, because they talked about wanting to help us in disasters. But to put something together so when we have those intakes. Because I know we all of a sudden when they come in, we call the rescue partners and see if they can take 1 or 2. But we probably should try to get.
We have shifted towards making our needs really public. And so, for example, when we took the 47 dogs in, we had a lot of new fosters step up, which was phenomenal. And that's what we need as the community to see what we're doing and then say, how can I get involved and help?
But I think this would be more of a permanent emergency that would come together once we have one of those.
And Dr. Panic and I talked about that. We were at the shelter till, I don't know, 2 or 3 in the morning doing intakes on all those dogs. And it would have been nice to have some extra support. Just, hey, I need you to put a kennel card on there, or and CERT would be a good.
That's what CERT does. I mean, whatever the issue is, and they train them in that. And I remember we went out, I think, and met with them about doing the animal training, et cetera. So then something
and we do some animal related training with CERT. We just had a CERT, somebody from CERT adopt 2 cats last night.
DOT uses those guys too, right? CERT for when floods come.
Yeah. So I did want to share just some stuff that we did in 2022. So in addition to the 2,000 animals that we take in, we treat a lot more, right? So we had over 400 animals that were not an intake that we provided treatment to, in addition to the vouchers that we issue every year so that people can go take their pets to our local veterinarians to get spay-neuter cert. And the idea behind doing that is that we're also hoping that they're going to establish a veterinary relationship when they take their pet to be spayed-neutered. We have been having to waive or reduce fees for some of our reclaims or our owner-surrendered pets in an effort to just kind of reunite animals with their people, just because we still do get feedback that people are experiencing financial hardship. And we do that on a case-by-case basis once we understand like what the situation is and they can show the need.
For those 378 spay-neutered, does that cover all of our pet population money a year, or do we go over or do we go under?
Some years we go over, some years we go under. Yeah, Christy's been keeping a running total.
So if we're under, we just take the rest for we have 2 separate buckets, or just take the rest for our own ones that we do.
For PPF,
yeah,
we usually don't have a lot left over. Okay. We've been issuing more vouchers in most cases than we have funds for.
Yeah. There's a couple of veterinarians that participate in the program that are really good about promoting it. Spay Illinois is a perfect example. They actually ask during intake, because they are a low-cost nonprofit clinic. They say, "Are you receiving SNAP benefits?" And if the answer is yes, they say you need to apply for a voucher at county. So there's a couple that do that.
And do you do that? I haven't looked at that in 5 years maybe, but I just know, I mean, these are low-income people, but I was amazed when I looked at some vets and how many of them were doing multiple animals for the same person. So somebody who's low-income, but that has 3 animals that they're bringing in that are 4.
A few years ago, we placed a limit on the number of vouchers that go to an individual. So there's a lifetime maximum of 2.
Lifetime maximum?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, we really prioritized making sure we're getting more educational programs out to the community, both virtual and in person. And we've expanded that to include more of our other agencies like police departments. We actually just presented to the Fire Chiefs Association a couple weeks ago. So just always trying to reach out to those agencies that we know we need to be partnering with us to help animals in our community. So
do we get the fire chief, or we get them the chip scanners?
There wasn't, I can talk about it after, there wasn't an overwhelmingly positive response to that. I think I maybe have 5 that are opting
Did you
in.
talk to Chief Riley at all from Westmont?
I don't know if he was in the room. I don't recall having a specific
Because I mentioned to
conversation.
him and he was excited about you.
Oh, I wonder if he was at the
Westmont.
meeting. I can reach out to him separately.
My daughter is 21 and she's the best I've ever seen in my life of clipping cat nails.
Oh, nice.
You should videotape her for
Yeah,
educational
yes.
purposes.
That is a challenge a lot of
She's
people
so
have is
good.
cutting animal nails.
Yeah, yeah.
Put it together.
That was her.
So our department revenue has continued to trend higher as you know, we are always working to increase compliance for rabies vaccine and registration. It seems like it's an ongoing challenge to find these different places where maybe there's not compliance, whether it's directly from the pet owner or from the veterinarians not sending us certificates. So that's something we're always tweaking. Our current FY23 revenue has been very strong to date on rabies registration. And we've also surpassed our estimates in service fees, which are like our adoption fees, relinquishment fees, penalties, education program fees, and adoption fees.
How much do we have outstanding from vets?
I think our accounts receivable is a little over 100,000 right now from our veterinary partners.
Procrastinators?
No, some of it is just the nuance that they get new practice managers. They're not communicating with corporate, so we follow up and yeah. We're increasing our revenue estimates for next year based on the prior trends. And then I've got some proposed increases to our pet adoption fees and our pet surrender fees. We did a study over the summer to kind of see what our fees are compared to other humane societies and other animal control type agencies, and we are definitely on the lower end. So we're suggesting some moderate increases there. Some other things that are impacting our budget this year is our capital improvements with the building. And we have in the budget to replace another one of our vehicles. So we have a total of 4 animal control vehicles. We replaced one last year, or this current year with the Tahoe. And then as the opportunity to place orders for vans is presented to us, we're trying to take advantage of that. So we did just place an order for a transit van, and we're going to do that each year. So
what's the status with the vans? Ford's not making them anymore. We have a policy to get those.
So I know that DOT is working with each and every department, and the problem is the collective purchasing. That's off. There's none of those in it, and Ford shut off new orders.
Right.
So we're constantly trying to do it. We're buying most of our vehicles on lots now.
But is it said before because they have some kind of thing where they only can work on Fords, or they're experts at Fords or something?
They have other ones, but Ford is obviously the one that they do. But they will,
if they don't make them anymore, it'll be putting us in a bind.
well, so one of the
We have a hole still in the floor of the van that we're driving around like Fred Flintstone.
Yeah,
Seriously.
I think some of the other challenges is there's very few companies that outfit vehicles for animal cages, and the Ford Transit is really the one that they're doing the most of right now. So.
And they're not producing them anymore. But we can go now on the lot and buy them.
That's part of what the board gave DOT authority is to go on a lot. So they'll search far and wide. They found some in Iowa.
Ford ain't going to make them anymore. We probably need to think about a different car. Man.
And then I also wanted to point out that we still continue to receive outstanding support from our donor base. DuPage Animal Friends has typically made a $50,000 general operating donation to our department. They increased it this past year after a really successful Giving DuPage Days. They may increase it next year, but right now the commitment is still for the $50,000, and that is in a whole separate accounting unit. So those that donation and the expenses that we associate with it are not part of this general budget. As is a lot of the expenses that are getting paid for the new building that were part of the grant that we received.
They dictated where that 50 is supposed to go. I mean, years ago they were making it for travel for education programs.
They're really, it's unrestricted. So yeah, as we have things that pop up, we create the budget for that.
So do you have a chart that shows the $2.1 million higher that is requested this year? Kind of like what specifically it is?
Yes, it was part of the budget. If you want to take a peek at that, it was part of the budget book.
Thank you.
what I really like about the new software that we're using this year is it allows us to itemize everything, which is really helpful, I think, for other people to see like what makes up that particular account. So
are some of these items part of the capital to build the building, like the radiation equipment or the kennel equipment?
Yes.
Medical equipment, is that part of the capital silo kind of and not
it is
operating?
I think what's tricky is and I apologize, I didn't bring the company 5,000 printout with me, but in the budget book, you're going to see that we received that 4.5 million, plus we had the restricted 500,000 plus, like that's in a whole separate account. So what happens is when we do the purchase order for the contractor, some is on this budget and then some is on the grant budgets. Okay.
So Laura, what specifically, if I were to tell the rest of my commissioners, what specifically is the $2.1 million increase in expenditures for the budget this year?
The majority
this kind of just lists everything, but I mean, what is the change from last year to this year?
The big change is the building.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and how much of that is the building? The 2.1 is the building.
I mean,
all of it?
Pretty much all of it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, in fact, we're even dipping into our,
okay.
I mean, our operating budget is balanced, but when we look at our capital expenses, we're going to likely be dipping into our fund balance to pay for this building.
Okay. So it's just building.
Unless we have a really successful fundraising campaign this coming year for the building and we can avoid dipping into our fund balance significantly, right?
Okay.
And I think the other thing to maybe point out is this budget that was presented, we're going to be meeting with facilities and, I mentioned at our last meeting that our building came in over budget.
Yes.
So we'll be talking about, amending the budget to account for this new contract or this change order for the contract, and then seeing if we can get that loan put in place again as a safety net if we can't raise the additional.
So the $4.5 million came in this year. So when you finalize this year's financials, we'll have a several $1 million surplus over expenses. Then is that what we did? Recognize it?
Well, yeah, it's restricted and it's in a whole different accounting unit. It's not in this.
Well, then if it's restricted, then shouldn't it come in this coming year then? Because we're spending the money, right?
It came in, but then it's on the purchase order, it's split up depending on
in this budget here, you got $3.5 million going out, right?
Right.
So it's coming out of reserve, but shouldn't somehow it have come in at the top somewhere?
Well, we're using up the grant money first, and then we dip into our fund balance.
So this $3.5 million
it's likely going to come out of our. It'll come out.
It's not coming out of the 4.5.
No, the 4.5 is completely separate from what we're looking at right now. Yeah.
Oh, it says right here, capital outlay is 3.6 million.
Yeah.
So is there anything else? I'm so sorry.
No,
is there anything else we need to know? Because I need to get to the next
meeting. I mean, really the rest of it is a lot similar to what we've had in previous years, just making sure that we can point out that even though our percentages in terms of revenue look different than in prior years, the majority of our operating is still that rabies fees and then the other associated fees. But because we have this capital project happening, we've got some donation stuff coming in. Normally doesn't.
Are those funds in interest-bearing accounts, I hope?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Our
They project 150,000, 73 bucks.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then
that's the number they gave us.
What's already planned next year for fundraising?
So DuPage Animal Friends has been very aggressively building, adding more people to their committees and board. And they have the April Gala planned. They've actually interviewed a couple fundraising consultants to manage the capital campaign. And I think it sounds like they're close to maybe making a decision. They filled me in at the board meeting last night on a couple.
And we'll talk about it at our next meeting here, but the naming rights will be finalized finally.
Right.
I think it's been held up with the state's attorney's reviews for policies. There was no policy in place, I guess. So they're getting that all put together so that next month we'll present it here. I think it's the plan, right? Next month here, and then they'll be able to go out to the community. That's been probably a couple months behind schedule, but there'll be the ability for people to get different naming rights, and that's where some of the bigger money will come in.
Will you be increasing any fees or anything like that this year?
So we're proposing increases in adoption fees and owner surrender fees.
But they're minimal. I mean,
it's not going to generate
Yeah,
much.
we're just trying to get back up to.
Like my
like
question
4%.
earlier, are we gonna have the surrender fees higher for out of county surrenders?
Yes, and they currently are. They are higher now, and the increase will continue to have the out of county higher.
If we want additional revenue, we need to put an extra increase, like $1 or on rabies tag, which we haven't done since last year.
2017.
Yeah, we gotta increase that.
But $1 is probably equates to what, 200,000. I mean, that's where.
Yeah.
That's the board last time we did like a $3 increase back in 2017. I think we only really needed 2, but I think the committee had the foresight to understand
I
that
think we did that when I was on the board.
Yeah, I think,
When we were
yeah, I
on the board
recall
since
that too.
2018.
2018 then, whenever it was. But yeah, it generated, and that's why we've been having enough money coming. It's an extra $1 really good.
Or do we want to do another $1 this year or no?
Oh, it's not gonna work.
Well,
My thought is, look, we do so much more than every other county around here.
I know.
And when you take your animal in and they charge you, that charge you $500.
Yeah, see, the thing is, they're taking the vets are taking a big piece of that, so they may not increase that bump even if we increase ours.
Well, and that's the challenge that I've been talking to Trevor about is, you know, when you've got a $15 tag and you see the vet's charging $29 for it and not being transparent too about
only 15 goes to the county.
It's a huge convenience fee. I was hopeful that we could try to work out some details legally first to maybe kind of bring, put some controls around what that can, maybe capping the convenience fee or making sure it's an itemized fee. And I think our state's attorney's looking into what our ability is to do that.
Because when we get to that new building, you're going to need more revenue and throwing a $2.
Because what we see is people then start refusing the tag at the vet. They say, I'm not spending.
But they're already spending several hundreds of dollars. So if we pass $1 onto the vet, I can't imagine somebody, it's not going to affect
See, a
their
lot
bill.
of places like Home Depot, or not Petco.
PetSmart.
Petco, not Home Depot. You can get your dog, you can get your rabies shot at Home Depot. But anyway, they don't charge much at all, you know, I mean, it's just the fee for the county.
There are some vets that are far more reasonable about what they're charging, and then others that are doubling it or.
Would you consider a fee increase? I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, we've been talking about it. I think we've also been talking about maybe some fee increases on some of our other services, you know, to our other agencies, some of the medical services we provide. So, but for now, as part of this budget, we just are doing some quick increases on adoption fees and surrender fees. So
I think the big money maker is going to be the naming rights.
Yeah, which we'll hopefully have at the next meeting. As I look at Trevor.
You have administrative
Trevor.
Yeah, I can do that real quick. So we're still caring for approximately 200 animals right now. If you've driven to the county coming from the south side, you'll see the pavilion is gone. They're moving a lot of dirt. They're trying to move as quickly as possible, but we've got to hold up with NICOR, and you know, we've had a lot of rain, so they're waiting.
Who's working on that? NICOR.
So RWE, who is our construction manager, has been the one communicating with NICOR and facilities. So
NICOR comment, they're all. If you leave it to them, they won't be able to get it done.
But I did want to update you guys on a timeline. So currently they're saying the addition will be done by mid-June is the goal.
Okay.
And then the renovation piece of the existing building, they're hoping that we would be moved in by the end of October.
Oh, wow, that's quick.
It's very aggressive. Yeah, which is phenomenal. Yeah. So we will be putting some communication out to the public about trying to limit our owner surrender intake as much as possible during, you know, we're doing it on a 30-day review period. So, you know, we started it yesterday and still took it many owner surrender pets, even though we're communicating to people over the phone to try to find alternatives. And I'm drafting something to go to our local humane societies to encourage them to help us out and see if they can start taking some owner surrender pets while we're in this construction phase.
That the owner surrender is because they cannot afford the pet animal? What is the main reason they're surrendering? I mean, I literally couldn't surrender mine.
Yeah, you know, it's not always just one reason, but a lot of it comes down to financial and just time, right? And a lot of times even those are intertwined. So I don't have the time to train. I've got a behavioral issue. I don't have the money to hire the trainer. There's a behavioral issue, or I can't afford well, yesterday I can't afford the medical, but sometimes it's just, I'm too busy, I'm working too many jobs, I'm never home. It's such a combination of things, but it's, what was I thinking is also sometimes part of it.
People have to really think strong before they adopt, because I mean, it's a big time and financial commitment. So at the core of it, it's always going to be time and finances, right? Time and finances. And then we have sprinkled in there the occasional, I've got a bite, like somebody had to surrender last minute yesterday because a dog bit their child, you know, and they couldn't afford euthanasia services at their vet, so they brought him to us, you know. But talk about length of stay. I would have normally euthanized that pet upon intake. It's got a microchip that goes to somebody else. So now I have to hold that dog until one of two things happens. Our 7-day stray period is done, and then I can euthanize that pet, or the person on that chip finally gets back to me, so we can not have to put that dog who's just sitting in a kennel for a week. You know, but those are the challenges we face when animals are coming in. So.
Quick question, getting back to the budget. How much would $1 increase in the rabies fee generate?
So we sell just under 100,000 tags a year.
So $100,000. That'd be nice though, because we're talking about the budget that our surplus and giving a piece for the funding of the building. But if, you know, maybe we could raise the fee here, just $1, you know, that we could use that $100,000 and move it somewhere else in our general budget.
Yeah. And I think the other piece that I'm really working hard on is trying to increase fundraising capacity for our Friends Board. When we look at the humane societies in our neighborhoods, they're operating mostly on donations. They don't have the benefit of a fee structure like ours with rabies tax. So they're getting, I just looked at a shelter last night, they've got $175,000 in just donations alone, right? So and I feel like, and we talked about this at the last meeting when Dawn so generously offered to try to help. Friends, and we have historically done really well in the $250 and under donor, right? How do we start attracting bigger donors, more consistent donors, some more recurring donors? And a lot of that comes down to the challenges in messaging, because people don't understand we're not funded by the general fund. So they say, why should I donate to that shelter? My taxes are already high, my taxes are covering that. Or when Friends is trying to do messaging about fundraising, their audience is a little different, right? And they're not the ones necessarily in the trenches doing the work. So the messaging about like donate to Friends is then helping the shelter. Like that's the piece we're trying to figure out. And then how do we attract the bigger donors and donors that stick around?
It's the board members. I mean, if you go look at the Hinsdale Humane Society or West Suburban, you see West Suburban elevated theirs when they changed the board, because so if you go to like Choose DuPage, it's better luck to get a couple of their board members.
Yeah.
I mean, because they'll be asking their social network of friends.
Right. And that's what we're trying to do with this.
What can we do to
helping us recruit volunteers and board members for Friends. That's what we've been doing. And if there's introductions to people that can get us
Greg and just have him put it out to his next big board meeting.
Yeah.
But that'll also be a source.
Because the idea is when you host a gala, we're talking about this with the gala that's coming up in April, when we talk about ticket prices, if it's a $200 ticket or somebody's buying a table, you've got to have a donor.
I think what you do is because Greg will have, they have the executive board at Choose DuPage, but then they have 4 times a year the big board, which has got 40 or 50 business heads on there. I would have him set a meeting up on one of those days, the quarterly meeting, to have you do a presentation of the naming rights of the new building.
Okay.
That would be.
Brian, getting back to the budget, how much of our budget has been, of that $13 million surplus, was proposed to be for animal services?
Well, zero. Our surplus for our general fund?
Yes.
Zero.
No, I thought she had something in there for the new building.
Nick's talking about.
I thought it was 500,000.
Nick's talking, but isn't that coming from? From us or ARPA? That's just 500,000. We're a standalone fund.
We had 900,000 from ARPA, the project itself,
right.
And then I think 500,000 is proposed as part of the.
From where? ARPA or general?
The surplus.
See, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
500,000 is from the surplus. It's not ARPA. It's our surplus.
Right.
So that's why I would support raising the fee so that we have that extra, instead of giving you 500,000, we give you 400,000, 300,000, and we move that other 200,000 somewhere else in the general.
Is that 500 is going to be outright, or is it a loan? Because originally we were going to take a $5 million loan, but we don't need that anymore.
That the 500,000 would be outright, and then we would still put the loan in place, and we're only drawing down the loan if we need to. Yeah.
I'm going to propose that on the floor.
So you know what an interesting
and then we.
So an interesting thing though that donors say to us is when we tell them that we receive no general fund money, they say, why would we donate to you if your own county board doesn't support what you do in any way? Like if they're not right,
we totally support what you do.
Well, but financially, there's no support.
Right.
And they say, what I would be happy if $1 of my taxes went to care for animals,
and
right?
How much do we pay the county back to the general fund for the?
We just did $146,000 is what we just paid back in indirect costs.
So they have indirect, they allocate a little bit of the finance department, everybody's time to there, so we have to pay.
So not only do I not receive general fund, but I pay back into the general fund.
Sure. No, I think
that's
great.
I welcome the change of being able to get.
No, I
$500,000.
I support it, but I'm just saying if we haven't raised the fees since 2017, I would support raising the fees.
And that's a different conversation, I think. Yeah.
But
I would agree it's a different conversation. Yeah. Because I also agree with you with raising the fees.
Yeah.
But I also agree with the $500,000. I do believe we need to buy into the
I'm just thinking
it's no different than when the executive
director. But I think that there's still some areas there that are
Next committee? Yep. Oh my. This is a good conversation.
Oh, no, economic development.
Yeah, so I think it's no different than when you talk about
no, I get it. I understand.
Setting an expectation from leadership to show I support the organization.
I understand.
When
I'm
friends
just coming back from the CPA standpoint of what is the most, if we're, thinking in my mind, if we're short on the fees, if our fees haven't been raised in 2017, raise it $1, $100,000, then we have another $100,000 in our budget over here to maybe give to the food bank or something. We have other things that we
I think the discussion we have on that though, I think the discussion we have on the fee raising, we have to look into, because when we go into that new building in 25, it's probably going to need more staff, more people, more expenses. Yeah. So instead of doing like one time, $1, and then next year going to the new building, doing it again, I think we look at what we do, and maybe it's $3, but it just do an amount so we don't do it 1 year and then again another year, but we'll do what we need to grow into.
Right.
Because we've already had a little bit of discussion about what we're going to need going into that new building. Again, it's going to be much bigger, and we're doing so much more. And they continue to do it with the same staff that they had, several years ago. They're still doing more and more services with the same people. I know they get burnt out a little bit, so I think we need to try to get them a little bit more help over there.
Absolutely.
So I don't disagree with you. I just think it's two different conversations.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
And we got to see how we do on not once the naming rights come out.
Right.
See how much buy-in we get from the private sector and the bigger donors.
Yeah. When you guys ask me what could you do to help right now, the support is what Friends needs, right? So when we are approaching our gala in April, we've had galas in the past and we have not had county board presence, right?
Well, last year it was on.
It's been Brian.
So I wanted to come, but I actually had a wedding that night for my niece, so I would have come. I put on my schedule.
I think you're thinking of a different. Yeah. So
15th of April.
So we want to.
The last one, the casino night?
It was in 20. The last one we had was in 2016. I think you're thinking of something else.
Oh, well,
yeah. Volunteer.
You're thinking of our volunteer appreciation. Yeah.
No, that last one was like 2016.
Nothing would make me happier to see every county board member have a table. That would make me so happy.
Except they're scheduling out the weekend of April 15th there for us.
Yeah, that's something, Brian, I love that.
Have to have like a CPA table where you guys have to sleep early.
What time did you get out last night?
Get your returns.
I was sitting in my bed, e-filing returns at about midnight.
I left at 11:30 from my office.
Yeah, that's why I was a little late today. Yesterday was the extended due date for tax returns. April 15th is a Sunday, so the filing date was the 16th. So I had so much.
Oh,
You guys haven't even adjourned yet, have you?
No, we just finished administrative.
Yes.
We'll go to any old business?
I have a new business,
Sure,
actually.
new business now.
I bet you were probably happy to see that West Chicago implemented a leash law. Or if you haven't seen that.
There's some interesting things about the law that they implemented.
Oh. I was glad to see it because the strays come from West Chicago.
You know, I will say this.
They should do a dog bite one. They're home rule, right? So police know.
Oh,
yeah. So one of the things that we are doing from a leadership perspective is we're being encouraged to look at our county ordinances by department. Because I think our committee's been great. We've done a couple of them already. We've done really big sweeping changes. But when we're assisting our local police departments and we look at what their codes say, we're kind of like, oh, that needs to be reviewed, right? So it'd be great to see some of our other municipal partners take a look at their own animal codes and see what needs to be updated, because there are some codes in there that just are pretty antiquated or don't make sense, or it's hard to enforce. And
everybody's know what happened recently was the mayor of West Chicago was out walking his dog and 2 dogs were allowed.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And ran out, actually attacked his dog, bit its dog in the head, took it to the vet. That may or may not have caught something with it. He took the dog home. It had punctured its skull. A little bit later, it died. And so he was not very happy. He wanted that dog that euthanized. And we've had examples of that happen throughout this county. Unfortunately, we're bound because we're not home rule, bound by the state law. And we need, I think, 3 dog on dog bites before we can declare it a dangerous dog. It's different if it's a human bite. So some municipalities that we had it recently in Downers Grove too, I think, home rules can put in their own rule, declare it dangerous, etc. But we're bound by that county. And I know we've had a lot of discussions with prior boards and stuff, and I think the chairwoman may be moving towards the potential referendum authority. And I think staff needs to start gathering examples, because it's not just always about taxes, but there's a lot of zoning issues and there's a lot of animal issues that we run into that we're bound by the state law. Because we can't do anything above which home rule communities can. And that's when we did the puppy mill ban. We tried to get legislation for DuPage and Will. Didn't go anywhere, but it started by home rule municipalities starting to do it, especially here in DuPage, Willowbrook, West Chicago, Warrenville, Downers, Naperville, Lyle, all passed it, and eventually the state did it. So, had we had home rule authority, I think the statute says it's going to be over 2 million. That's the question. Hence why they probably put a leash law, and they could have done some of their own. They just don't know that.
Interesting. Okay.
Sometimes it takes something happening a little closer to home, right?
Yeah.
To take a look at what your laws are.
Surprised he hasn't called you, but he's on the phone with his attorney.
Oh, he doesn't really talk to me that much.
Well, he's not a happy camper, which I understand, but there's nothing we can do.
We didn't have the legal authority to take that dog and euthanize it. Was the bottom line. And,
no.
So.
That's a sad situation.
Oh. Any other new business? Without objection, we return.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent.